All right, so we got a lot going on around here, a lot going on in the NFL, kinda. Looks like Tom Brady's season is complete. We're going to have to go through that same old. Will he, won't he, what's he going to do? All that type of stuff we've been going through the last few years. So we'll figure that out. It is the locker room, a little live stream action because there's so much going on with the Houston Texans. Only source for daily digital Texans content. I'm Landry Locker. You can hear me Monday through Friday, 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 610, the home of the Texans. We have players on weekly. We talk to the coaches, and we talk to ownership. So it is your best source for Texans content. And you can follow me on Instagram at Landry Locker, on Twitter at Landry Locker. Subscribe, like, all that jazz, and comment. And we'll get to those. This is an interactive thing. If you haven't seen the video so far, we've already talked about CJ Stroud committing for the draft as expected. Will the Texans be interested? Will he be interested in them? There's a lot of questions that emerge from that. But this is about the coaching news that has come down today. And let's start with the biggest news. Sean Payton. Sean Payton has interviewed with the Houston Texans. He did so tonight. He seemed to be prepared for the interview, seemed to have a pretty big grasp of this Texans gig, not the national talking points. And this was Sean Payton. He was actually on. Okay, so that's interesting. He is correct about the draft capital. No doubt. He's right about that. The difficult questions, I'm assuming, I don't think he's gonna have any like major. We'll hear from Mike Kafka in a second. I don't think he's going to have any, major reservations that you may think. I think it's going to be more logistics, like organizational logistics. I get final say on this, and maybe even, acquiring players, etc. But he's going to have options. And I would rather find the next Sean Payton instead of bringing in Sean Payton. I understand it creates immediate buzz, creates immediate credibility. It could be like a Bill Parcells when he went to Dallas type of turnaround immediately that you don't see coming, where the team goes 5-11, 3 consecutive seasons, and then he comes there, they go 10-6 and make the playoffs. Could easily see that. I just think there are so many good candidates out there right now that finding the next Nick Sirianni, finding a Brian Dable type, that's my ideal scenario. Now, people are asking about draft equity. I mean, look, I don't think you should. I'm not against like giving up something for Sean Payton. It's just whenever you're going to make trades, I feel like there's got to be like some sort of leverage. Like, who are you bidding against when it comes to Sean Payton? Like, John Gruden was still with the Raiders. He was 29 years old. He didn't step away for a year. So why would you have to give up a first rounder and change? Like, the number 12 pick in this year's draft is going to be a pretty big piece. So why would you have to give that up? I know the Saints are probably trying to cover their ass because they traded up for Chris Olave and they gave their pick to the Philadelphia Eagles, best team in the league this year. So they're trying to cover their ass. I just don't know what leverage you have. Like, if you have to get rid of it and you haven't used it anyways, like, what leverage do you have? I mean, I think he still has a pretty good relationship with the Saints. Are they going to try to spite him? Are they just going to say, oh, if you don't give us this, he's just going to sit out like he did last year? You got to get something. I mean, it's like going into your storage unit and getting something that you already don't use and still asking for like top dollar when everybody that is buying it already knows. It doesn't make sense. I still wouldn't dismiss the possibility of the Cowboys. I know they're putting in quite the assing on Tampa Bay right now, but just like Mike Mularkey with Tennessee in 2017, I don't think beating the Tampa Bay Buccaneers currently have a point differential of -70 for the season, combined regular season and now. So I don't think this like saves Mike McCarthy's job. If they go to San Francisco and wet the bed, I could easily see them getting in this thing. And there are some other situations that I think Sean Payton's going to like. I just, if they bring him in again, I'm not going to like pound the table and complain about it. I just think I would like to find the next Sean Payton. B, I don't think you should have to give up a ton. I'm not saying that coaches aren't valuable, but you're pushing 60, you've walked away, and there's no leverage. So like this notion that you're going to have to give up a ton, I just don't get. But again, if you bring in Sean Payton, immediate credibility, the job is appealing. It's right up there near the top. I just, maybe Carolina, they got some young talent. They're going to have a top 10 pick. And then Arizona, they just hired Monty Austinfort. Interesting. Another Patriot guy. I don't know what his relationship with Payton is like, but I would keep an eye on that. And then I guess the Chargers just don't want to pay a coach, and they're going to keep Brandon Staley. So that's kind of interesting. Subscribe, like, all that type of stuff. Only source for daily Texans content digitally. Also recommend Cody Stutes, his YouTube channel, along with many others. 713 Sports. He's been good to me as well. Shout out to old Ruben out there. Joe Blue asks, would it be crazy to move up from 12th to the 3rd to put pressure on Chicago with that pick? I don't really know how that would do that. No disrespect. I don't know. Like, how would that pressure them? Indianapolis could still leap them. I don't know what moving up to 3 would do. And I don't know what it would cost. I mean, do you want to trade one of your ones next year to do that? I mean, if you like someone at 3, and let's say you take a quarterback and then you want to, trade for Jalen Carter, trade up and go get Jalen Carter or Will Anderson or whatever, maybe. But I don't know how trading up to 3 puts any pressure on Chicago. Ryan says, if Cook gets you a second, you essentially traded that first to get Payton and pick up an extra second. I mean, if Cook gets you a second, I'll be shocked. I heard the Cowboys offered it. I don't think Nick is going to admit that, but I heard the Cowboys already offered the second. And I don't, it's a weak free agent wide receiver market. But the one thing I would say is that Amari Cooper went for a 5th rounder last year. I would say him and Cooks are kind of in the same tier, same category. Cooks will be traded for the 4th time. Didn't have that great of a season. I mean, I would give Nick credit if it happened. But if you get a second, I don't see that happening for Brandon Cooks. But, I've been wrong before and I'll be wrong again, probably many a times. You know that, probably many times as soon as tomorrow at 10 a.m. on Sports Radio 610. Faded opinion, I can't believe that we're even talking about Sean Payton right now. I give up the 33rd pick now that we know they'll take the late 1st round. I agree. And I was talking about this today. It seems like a month ago that Lovie Smith was fired. Does anyone else feel that way? Like it seems like it's been like a month since Lovie Smith got fired. So much has happened. You've had all these interviews. You got all these interviews this week. DeMeco Ryans is going to interview this week. We'll hear from him. We'll talk about that. It does, I think this last week has probably been the best week of PR that the Texans have had, probably going back to, in my opinion, late April of 2017 when they traded up for Deshaun Watson and officially put, the Brock Osweiler stuff in the rear view. I think that was, you felt like maybe you had your franchise quarterback. You'd lived the Brock nightmare. You wondered if you were going to be stuck with him. They'd already, gotten away from that and were heading in a different direction. But that was probably the best PR they had. And really since then, it just kind of went downhill beginning in 2019 when Easterby came in and started doing what he was doing. But this last week, and I don't want to give them too much credit because they're functioning like a normal organization. which you would like to expect. But it's been a hell of a week. From the timeliness of firing Lovie Smith, the timeliness of going after top-notch candidates, the unthinkable of even talking to Sean Payton and then interviewing Sean Payton, DeMeco Ryans saying yes to the interview. I mean, it's been a hell of a week for the Texans. So I'm with you, Faded Opinion. It has been pretty wild. Max asks, what about the 2024's first from the Browns? Man, I think that's going to be a good pick. I think there's a chance that's going to be a good pick. But you do bring up an interesting point. You do have, 2 firsts this year and 2 next. I just don't think that the Texans, because they have those 2 firsts, should have to give up more because of it. Like, it's not a bidding war. If we were in a bidding war, then I would love to talk about, the draft equity. It's not a bidding war. Like, Sean Payton says where he wants to coach. What are the Saints going to do? Hold him hostage? Like, Denver traded their first round picks for Russell Wilson. If Sean Payton decides he wants to go to Denver, are the Saints going to say, well, you're going to have to give this up? I just don't think it works that way. I just don't think it works that way. A lot of people talking about what they would pay. Michael would do a second. Look, if they want to pay, they can pay. Multiple firsts would be a lot. But again, we're talking about getting Sean F. and Payton, which is pretty damn wild. Houston Oilers, love the content. Keep it coming, my dude. Exciting offseason. I would say it's probably the most exciting offseason in franchise history and really one of the most important. And I would say it's probably the best start in the history of off seasons here. So yeah, I'm absolutely with you. This franchise is in no shape to be trading away first round picks. That's what Colin the Irishman says. A lot of people feel the way that you do. Jigsaw says, to be honest, I think that Demico is the best man for the job. I'm a Demico guy too. I'm a big Demico guy. So I'm kind of with you. Glenn asks, did Quentin Johnston declare? Yes, he did. Quentin Johnston, Jordan Addison, wide receiver out of USC, Johnston, wide receiver out of TCU, and CJ Stroud, they declared today. So potential number 12 overall pick there for the Texans. Joey says, thoughts on giving away Cooks in a third for Payton? I mean, that's too EA Sports for me. I don't know why the Saints would want to trade for Cooks at this point, given the fact that they just got, Olave, who they like. And they're kind of in a not great cap situation. So I don't think they would want Cooks. Brian says, I hope you're monetized because commercials show up on your previous videos doing great, and I'm liking every video. I don't know what's up with the ads. Just wait for them and keep it going. CRJ713, Sean Payton and Demico Ryans gives the Texans instant credibility. I would agree. I would actually absolutely agree. Vincent asks a good question. We're still on Sean Payton. We'll get to Demico and we'll get to Hardo Kafka, who I like a lot, by the way. I think I might like him a little bit more than Payton, crazy as that sounds. Vincent asks, what kind of coaching staff will Payton put together? There's been talk that Vic Fangio could be his defensive coordinator, probably an older staff. But, Sean Payton's going to have his staff. Guys are going to be wanting to come coach with Sean Payton. So I don't think you have to worry about the staff with him. Tyler says, are we really the first interview Payton has taken, and should that mean anything? He's taken multiples. Look, he's going to talk to everyone. He's going to talk to as many people as he can, whether you're first or last. I don't know. I don't have like a witty Ricky Bobby line or anything like that. I don't know if there's advantages to talking to a guy first. I don't know if there's advantages to talking to a guy last. The difference between interviewing Sean Payton and interviewing any of the other candidates is he's essentially interviewing you because he's picking his destination and he's picking where he's going. So really, I mean, maybe in some instances where a lot of these guys are going to take the first offer they receive. Like sometimes guys don't have multiple offers. Sean Payton, for whatever reason, not for whatever reason, we know why, because of his resume, but it's a different situation for him, because he's basically interviewing you. And if he says yes, then that's when it kind of goes. It's kind of like Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson had the no trade clause. He was pretty much able to pick his destination, which is what he did with Cleveland. He negotiated his deal, and then the Texans, traded him to the Browns, got as much as they could for him. But that's a quarterback in his prime. Joe's bringing up the Lamar Jackson thing. Get one of the younger prospects and trade the picks for Lamar Jackson. I don't know. Sean Payton didn't seem to be the biggest fan of Lamar Jackson, and how it went down with the Ravens this offseason. So, or not this offseason, this postseason. So I don't know how he feels about Lamar. I know he wasn't a big fan of that type of stuff. Quincy says Sean Payton would bring buzz. No doubt. You don't have to think that. No doubt. And what would assume free agents would look our way when otherwise they probably wouldn't. Any value in that? Excellent point. And that's a really, really good point that I haven't heard brought up, Quincy. So respect to you. We've talked about there's probably going to be a Texans tax. So there's probably going to be, a necessary overpay for certain guys, like the Jags did with Christian Kirk and some other dudes. People aren't just foaming at the mouth to come play for the Texans. But if Sean Payton's here, you bring up a really, really, really good point that maybe free agents want to come here, and maybe there's some value in that. So when we're talking about trade and draft equity, if guys in the past wouldn't even look the Texans' way, if they see Sean Payton's here, they see the instant credibility, maybe they want to come here. That's an excellent point, Quincy. Props to you. Appreciate you for being here. Subscribe, and that's why I like interacting with y'all, because y'all give some really good ideas. But that's an excellent point. There's definitely value in that. So we'll see. T1908 says, I'll give Burkhead for Payton. Rex Burkhead wouldn't touch the field on Sean Payton's team. As a matter of fact, the one good thing about Payton is Sean Payton has always, always, always seen value in multiple running backs, multi-skilled running backs. They had Ingram, who was Pro Bowl caliber, and they still brought in Kamara, and they used him. They had Darren Sproles for a long time. They always used him. Rex Burkhead, that BS that we saw this year with Rex Burkhead lingering around, nice guy, but has no business being on the too deep of a running back depth chart under any circumstance. Still was able to hang around all year. That ish wouldn't fly around here with Sean Payton. So, I know you're kidding about trading him. He's actually a free agent for Payton, but that type of crap would not fly at all. It would not fly. Sean says, I hate the hottest of takes. You'll hate it. After the GM signing with the Cardinals, I think the Texans may be the top on team on the list. Sorry, just tuning in now. Tell me why I'm off. I don't know what Sean Payton thinks of Monty Austin Ford or not. I know he has a relationship with Caserio because of the New England thing. Monty was there as well. So I don't know, what that is. Juan brings up Payne, the nose tackle from Washington. God, he kicked their ass this year, didn't he? The Texans. DJ Reader has me missing a Mauler in the middle. Yeah, the fact that they, being Jack and Bill, basically chose Whitney Merciless and, the other guys that they gave money to, Randall Cobb, Eric Murray, over DJ Reader. I don't think they've completely recovered from that. They definitely need some interior help with Malik Collins. Nice transition here from Jose. Appreciate the alley-oop. He brings up Mike Kafka, who would be a very nice option if DeMeco and Steichen don't take the job, but sucks that Kafka declined the interview. All right. He didn't decline the interview. That did not happen. He did not decline the interview. He declined doing the interview right now. And this is interesting. And this is where I'll just give you like kind of something that you might not see about Mike Kafka. Kafka was in Kansas City. He worked with Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes still the MVP without Kafka. But Kafka was a big part of what Kansas City did. And in 1 year, Brian Daboll has trusted him to call the plays. He calls the plays. I know Tony Dungy said Brian Daboll's calling a good game. Tony Dungy has basically taken over for Bill Polian as the legend and former Colts guy who just says dumb stuff and shows that he's not quite in touch with the NFL despite his legendary presence. Mike Kafka's calling the plays. It's a known fact. It was a known fact going back to September. All you got to do is watch the game. Brian Daboll is a CEO type of coach, a Mike Tomlin, Jimmy Johnson type, still involved, but Kafka is calling the plays, and he's also a total hardo, which is the complete opposite of Demico Ryans. Here is Mike Kafka as we get to know him. Excellent job that he's done with Daniel Jones, but watch how this hardo started off his press conference last week. And this week, Brian Daboll said, although they're allowed to interview, he's not going to because he's so damn focused.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sure a few of you have questions about some of the head coaching interview stuff. And it's an honor and a privilege to be a part of those conversations and be a part of that process. But really, that's all I have to add on it. You know, my focus today and this week is really on getting our guys ready for Minnesota in the week ahead and today's practice. So that's really all I have. And I really appreciate, you guys respecting that part of it.
You intend to do those eventually, then potentially next week?
Yeah, I really have nothing else to add on the head coaching side of it.
All right. Kind of awkward. And I get it. Some guys are wired like that to where they just don't, they're not going to, they don't want to be taken away from that intensity in the building. Some guys aren't. Some guys are wired to where, they can do multiple things. They can do an interview and they can focus on the task at hand, which brings us to the next guy. You just saw the hardo Mike Kafka, which you might like that vibe. That might be kind of your vibe, but that's a little grasp of what Mike Kafka would bring. And I'm a Mike Kafka fan. I'm a big fan of Mike Kafka. But look at Demico Ryans. If you just want to get like a grasp of how, different things are with Demico compared to Mike Kafka, this is Demico Ryans, and exact same situation, got a playoff game coming up, got something to prepare for, and you got teams wanting to speak to you. Here's the difference between Kafka and Demico Ryans and how they address questions as they prepare for a playoff game about potentially being head coaches.
It's very humbling to be able to get requests for head coaching interviews, right? It's humbling when you think about a lot of guys who coached before me and a lot of guys put in a lot of years, like a guy like Bobby Turner comes to mind and all of the years he put in. So I think about guys like that and them not being able to get the opportunity and me, truly being able to go represent for them. And that's what it means. It means a lot for the other guys that have been before me. And it's special to be able to be in a select group, to have head coaching interviews and people requesting. It's a special moment. It's a proud moment. And I'm very thankful and grateful just to be spoken of in that light. And so I'm very, very humble, very grateful for those opportunities.
A year ago, you had an opportunity to go get multiple interviews, and you said, no, I want to come back. I have more to learn. I would imagine a year later, how do you feel about that decision a year ago?
I feel strong about the decision I made, and I feel like it was the correct decision for me and my family at the time.
How much is going through
He's still
your
going.
last year in terms of kind of balancing your time, maybe help you know.
Notice this, he's still going. Let's look at Demico. And I'm not saying there's a right vibe, right? There's some hardos that are head coaches like Kafka. And then there's guys like Demico. Like, look at him. He's got the eye contact. He's answering the questions. It's just just a grasp. You know, we can talk about resumes. We can talk about what they've done. They both have good resumes. Not one vibe is better than the other. So this isn't like something that's just supposed to make you say, aha, but it's just kind of a grasp of like the different type of guys they are. Here's Demico, some more from him.
Right. During this time, I'm thankful and happy to be in the playoffs at this time, and the interviews and those things, they'll take care of themselves at the right time. The focus is all about Seattle for me. It's all about that, all about what can we do? How can I help our guys be in position to go and win this game on Saturday? That's the focus. The interviews, all those things, right? They'll take care of themselves.
Your
Still going.
focus this last year. And
Still
I
going.
You
Don't need to focus like Kafka.
at your
Hardo.
job and perhaps prepare yourself better for a head coaching job down the line.
Right. For me, it's just overall, there's a lot of scenarios, a lot of situations that come up throughout the year, not just looking at it from a defensive perspective, but looking at it from a total team perspective, and just being able to sit in and listen to conversations and just really enhance my knowledge, not just on defense, but on overall team. That's the biggest thing for me. And I feel really good about where I am right now.
You take notes from Kyle and those types of things.
Yeah, always learning. For me, it's been awesome to be here and learn from Kyle. He's been an outstanding head coach, successful, has done it for coaching this league for a very long time, very knowledgeable guy. And I've gained so much knowledge from just sitting, listening to him, studying, seeing how he operates, how he runs the team. There's not a better guy for me to be able to sit under and learn from for the time that I've been here. He's been outstanding.
Nick said last week that one of the things he likes most about you is you push hard, but you
Still
know
going.
when to back off, or you just have a really good touch.
So you get the point. Demico Ryans. It's just a different vibe. Not a right vibe, not a wrong vibe, just a different vibe. Demico Ryans, half of his press conference, because y'all know I'm the podium critic. 11 minutes of his press conference was just about coaching, all that type of stuff. Mike Kafka wants no part of it, to the point where he's not even taking interviews right now. So just a little grasp of, kind of the personalities of those two guys and how it works. So I find it pretty interesting. Very, very much. I kind of want to, before I get to some more comments, I kind of just want to scroll through Tony Dungy's Twitter feed, because I find it really amusing. I know that he's a legend, but I'm just amused by, it's very Bill Polian-like, where Bill Polian's a legend, but when he speaks, it was very clear that he just didn't have a grasp of the current NFL. And I'm just going to give you a few examples. And again, no disrespect to the legend. I just think it's kind of funny. So when Adam Schefter reported Lovie Smith is out as Texans head coach, per source, Tony Dungy said, "What are the Texans doing? What kind of operation is this where you don't have any convictions about supporting the coaches you hire? Who is going to want to coach there if you might only get 1 year to implement your plans? 2 years in a row is ridiculous." Okay. First of all, it's a completely different situation, and he should know that. It's a completely different situation. And to answer the question, who's going to want to coach there, it seems like everybody. So your question is answered there, but it's very obvious that Tony Dungy, it's very Bill Polian-like, and I'll just give some more examples of Tony Dungy. There's always the motivational stuff, which he's really, really good at. And here is more from Tony Dungy talking about the firing. He says, "It's not about race. It's just about planning and support versus dysfunction. Chuck Noll was 1-13 his first year. Bill Walsh was 2-14 his first year. Tom Landry was 0-11-1. I started 1-8 in Tampa. Good organizations don't change the course every year. Okay. First of all, let's not compare David Culley and Lovie Smith to Bill Walsh, Chuck Noll, Jimmy Johnson, and you, because you were a pretty damn good coach. And second of all, the Texans weren't a good organization. And as a result of their sins, the Houston Texans had to go through the mud. It's much like the San Francisco 49ers, except the Texans' disaster was even worse than the 49ers. The 49ers had back-to-back one-and-done coaches before they hired Kyle Shanahan. They hired Jim Tom Sula, and then they hired Chip Kelly. And we knew Lovie Smith wasn't the long-term fit, but no one else was going to hire Lovie Smith. We knew David Culley wasn't the long-term fit, and nobody was going to hire David Culley. So let's not throw out the names. Come on, Tony. Let's not throw out the names Chuck Noll, Bill Walsh, when talking about how the Texans handled that situation. Come on, Coach. You're better than that. A couple of other stuff, some good motivational stuff. Oh, God. Here's another one from him. I'm really excited to be part of the group bringing you Super Wildcard Weekend on Sunday Night Football on NBC. Today, I'm teaming up with the great Al Michaels for Chargers Jaguars, and I think we're going to have a great game. Well, you did, but you damn sure didn't sound excited calling it. Good God. That was the worst broadcast in the history of the league. Goodness gracious. Man, I gave Al Michaels all the benefit of the doubt because I love Al Michaels. I mean, his delivery hasn't fallen off or anything like that, but good Lord. He said, that the reason why he sounded bored during Thursday Night Football was because the quality of the game, and he just has a grasp of the audience, and at this point he knows. Well, he lost that excuse Saturday. BSM actually did a write-up on our segment talking about this. Barrett Sports Media at BSM. Shout out to Jason Barrett and them for doing what they do for the industry. But, man, that was awful by Al Michaels. Awful. And Tony Dungy wasn't much better. So he kept saying that he was excited. I don't quite know about all that. Here's another gem from Tony Dungy, who just has a lot to say about the Texans. And I just look, it's very Bill Polian-like. Sometimes, you get stuck in your old ways. This was as the Giants were defeating the Minnesota Vikings. Brian Dable is calling an excellent game for the Giants. He is keeping Minnesota defense completely off balance. Well, as I think many of the comments will point out, and I think Brian Dable's a great coach. But as DD says, the play caller is Mike Kafka. And if you followed the NFL, you would probably be able to know that. Let's just type Mike Kafka calling plays. I mean, you can see it, but I mean, Mike Kafka calling plays for the Giants has been really cool. OC Mike Kafka to call plays in the regular season. Giants OC Mike Kafka, not Brian Dable, to call plays. NFL.com. Giants Brian Dable won't take over play calling for Mike Kafka. December 6th. Mike Kafka embraces special opportunity to call plays. I'm just bringing that up because Tony Dungy's had a lot to say about this situation. And with all the stuff that's gone on here, I don't expect any national media type to know a damn thing about the Houston Texans. Why the hell would you do that to yourself? You got to follow 32 teams. The Texans, quite frankly, they're not worth your attention at this point. If your job's just to cover the whole league, they're not worth your attention. But if someone can't even know who's calling plays during a playoff game when it's right there in front of you, and you literally broadcast every Sunday football night in America, you just called a playoff game and you don't even know who's calling plays. How in the F, when that guy talks about an organization that has really not even been relevant the last 2 years, how the hell are you going to take serious what Tony Dungy says about the Texans? Like seriously. And I know they put together the committee a couple of years ago, and they put together like some old names, and they got criticized for not using the committee. Maybe rightfully so. Maybe they listen too much to old Jack, the POS person of service. But if Tony Dungy can't even grasp like the basic stuff, how the hell is he gonna how can you realistically expect him to go up there and know what the Texans are doing? Bill Polian's kind of gone away the last few years. I feel like Tony Dungy's basically taken over and become the guy who used to work for the Colts. That's a legend. I'm not taking away from him not being a legend, but this just kind of sounds off and says stuff that doesn't make sense. Remember when Bill Polian said that Lamar Jackson was a wide receiver or whatever? I mean, like, all right, Tony. All right, Tony. Very, very interesting. Some more comments talking about Sean Payton interviewing Demico Ryans. Sean Payton has already interviewed. Demico Ryans going to interview this week. Mike Kafka's a hardo. He's going to hold off. Subscribe to the channel, like all that type of stuff. Locker Room, daily Texans digital content from someone who's in the mix as close as anyone can be. Michael Alba says, I want a young coach. I'm with you. I want to find the next Sean Payton, Michael. So I'm 100% with you. Jose Garcia says, Mike Kafka would be a nice option if DeMeco and Steichen don't take the job, but sucks that Kafka declined the interview. Again, didn't decline, just not going to do it this week. So they might have to wait. And I don't know that there's too much of a hurry. So we'll see what happens. Maybe the Giants lose to the Eagles this week, and then there'll be more time. Maybe they pull off the upset. They're playing some pretty good ball right now. And I don't think DeMeco or Steichen is going to turn down this gig. I think it's too appealing. So I wouldn't anticipate that. Tyler Olson, maybe a question for another time, but is Clowney a guy we look to bring back if we go young at QB, since he can spend a little extra anyways? I don't know. Clowney kind of it was kind of an interesting end in Cleveland this year with Clowney making business decisions. I've always been a Clowney guy. I like the guy. I think he's funny. I think he's entertaining. I don't think he gets enough credit for how good of a run stopper he is. But God, they should have franchise tagged him in 2019. I think he really would have helped them. The year that they melted down against KC. I think the value that year would have been nice, but I don't know if they want to bring him in or not. I do think that a coach like Sean Payton, a coach like DeMeco Ryans, and really a lot of these coaches that we're talking about, I think they would be able to handle Clowney pretty well as anyone else. So he's more of a guy, though, I think at this point, that wants to be on a good team. So I don't know what Clowney does. It just seems like he's a guy who doesn't want to go to camp, and he's kind of just hopping around the league. And they do have some decent young guys on D. So I wouldn't think he would be a guy, but you never know. Once you get a player's coach like DeMeco or a guy like Sean Payton, who's got a long history of working with guys. Vince Marks, shout out to you. I am sorry for bringing it up. Don't be sorry for bringing it up. Do you think Michael Thomas would want to play for Sean? I'm over the Michael Thomas thing. How long has he been hurt? Maybe it would be a bargain, and I don't know how he feels about Sean Payton. It seems like Michael Thomas, God, what's it been, 3 years now? Hurt, gets paid, hurt. I think he ignored the Saints phone calls for 2 months or something like that, a month. Maybe this offseason or previous. So I don't know how Sean Payton would feel about Michael Thomas. I do think Sean Payton's probably going to be a little bit more forgiving than a lot of coaches would be, and he's in control. But the way that the Michael Thomas stuff went down on the back end, again, he made some history with Sean Payton. I just don't know if that's, makes sense or not. Jonathan, how do you feel about Sean Payton and Tom Brady team up in Houston? Barf. It would be exciting, but I don't want 46-year-old Tom Brady. But it would be really exciting. Good God. Did we just watch Tom Brady play? My gosh, Tom Brady. They were going to team up in Miami. How funny would that be? Sean Payton and Tom Brady. You know what? You actually gave me an idea for a little dialogue there. So I'm actually going to put that on the on the rundown. So I appreciate you. I actually credit you. I'm going to say Jonathan Foster tomorrow on In the Loop, 10 to 2 Sports Radio 610. I had fire up the Odyssey app. I'll give you credit. I even put it on there. See, there's a little rundown. If you can see it, Jonathan Foster right there. So this is how like the rundown goes. So we're getting stuff ready. It's kind of an ongoing thing, but I'll throw that out there. I'll throw it to Lopez. I'll throw it to the peeps. And I'll credit you. And I appreciate all the listeners and the new viewers that are in here having some fun. And that was a hell of a question, Jonathan. That would be funny. Tom Brady in a Texans uniform. How about that? Black Rain says Lamar Jackson has been hurt for the last 2 years and coming off a knee injury. They need a younger quarterback. I agree. Although I do wonder if Lamar Jackson, where he ends up, there's a lot of possibilities. And there's a lot of teams that are really desperate for a quarterback. And a lot of them have high draft picks. The other 3 teams that were in the mix for Deshaun Watson last year, they got bad quarterback play. What could Arthur Smith in Atlanta do with Lamar Jackson? I think a lot. I actually think he could do a really good job. I actually think he's coached his ass off, although the record might not tell you that. What could they do with him in Carolina? Would the new coach in Carolina want to work with him? What about the Saints? Tennessee. Could Tennessee use Lamar Jackson? Little run-focused offense, not a lot of receivers, but you got Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. Indianapolis, would they be interested? Who's the coach going to be? I think if Shane Steichen goes somewhere, maybe, the way that he's handled Hurts, he could be able to get a lot out of Lamar Jackson. There's a lot of options. There's a lot of teams that are going to be in the market for veteran quarterbacks. So I do wonder what happens with Lamar Jackson. I don't think he ends up here. I don't even know what the cost is going to be. That contract negotiation was already interesting. I think it gets more interesting. I don't think he gained any leverage this year betting on himself. It's not like a Joe Flacco situation where you win a Super Bowl and they have to pay you and come in, at your mercy. But that's a good question. Max says, do you think Payton is a Mills guy? I've seen that floating around Twitter. I think Sean Payton might not hate working with Davis Mills, quite honestly. And look, I'm a Bryce Young guy. I don't know if Sean Payton's going to be a Bryce Young guy. He said on Fox Sports 1 that, if the guy can't walk on water, you don't draft someone without the physical traits. So maybe Sean Payton looks at this draft and he says, I don't like any of these guys a lot. Let's get Will Anderson. Let's figure some stuff out, and I can work with Davis Mills for at least a year. And I'll compare it to this. And this is an actual comparison. And Sean Payton was on this staff. When the Dallas Cowboys went 5-11 for 3 straight years, they were the joke of the NFL. They had an incompetent coach for those 3 years in Dave Campo. He sucked. And they decided they wanted to bring some credibility. Many people believe they actually wanted to be able to build the new stadium, which they currently have, Jerry World. So they brought in Bill Parcells. A friend of mine's dad was actually on the staff, Tony Sperano Jr., rest in peace to senior. And Sean Payton was on the staff as well. And they went 10-6 immediately. And they did so with Quincy Carter, who had a lot of flaws. People were ready to punt on Quincy Carter, but Sean Payton, Bill Parcells came in, and they were able to get as much as they could out of Quincy Carter. And they made the playoffs. They ended up losing to Carolina in the first round, but they got as much as they could out of Quincy Carter. So maybe we get to a point where Sean Payton kind of says, we don't have our quarterback of the future. Now, they also liked Tony Romo eventually, and that was where Sean Payton was the one who actually wanted Tony Romo. So we credit him with Breeze, but he actually seeked out Tony Romo and liked him. But they got to the playoffs with Quincy Carter. They went 10-6, I believe. And I mean, they were using like Richie Anderson as, one of their main like receiving threats out of the backfield. And they did that. So if they could do it with Quincy Carter, maybe Sean Payton thinks he could hold down the fort with Davis Mills. And there's a tangible comparison to something like that happening when Sean Payton, I believe he was the assistant head coach and the quarterback's coach. So you might be right. Maybe he thinks he could work with Davis Mills. Who knows? There's an actual tangible example there instead of just going on the internet and, listening to stuff. Alfredo says Sean Payton with Young, Stroud, and Bijan. I will say this. If the Texans keep their 2 1s this year, let's say they trade a 1 next year or something like that, and they decide to give like a 3 this year. If Bijan gets to 12, do not sleep on Sean Payton drafting Bijan Robinson at 12 and pairing him with Dameon Pierce. Bijan Robinson's got some of that Alvin Kamara in him, and maybe Dameon Pierce could be the Mark Ingram. There's going to be multiple skilled backs that Sean Payton is going to use. JRG just said Bijan plus Pierce. Maybe Gibbs plus Pierce in the second round. But Sean Payton, Nick Caserio might not have valued it this year. He didn't take the running back position serious. Sean Payton ain't going to do that. He knows the value of using running backs. He masters it. He knows how to do it. So don't sleep on that. If they have that 12 and Sean Payton comes here, don't sleep on Bijan coming here and bringing that Dijon mustard to the NRG concession stands. That's the trick. Says if we get Payton, I wonder if he will go after another KSU running back, maybe Deuce in the mid rounds. I'm a Deuce Vaughn guy. Deuce Vaughn's a guy that's going to get passed on. And it might take some time, but he's going to be a guy that contributes on an NFL team. I guess you're comparing the Darren Sproles situation and how Payton used him with the Saints. I like Deuce Vaughn a lot. I don't know when he's going to go. Maybe third, maybe fourth, maybe earlier. But I liked James Cook last year with the Bills, and it does seem like for whatever reason, I don't know whether he was kind of nicked up. I don't know whether there just wasn't much trust. They kind of don't run the ball as well as they would have liked to at the start of the year. But if you notice in the playoffs, James Cook out of Georgia last year, the brother of Dalvin, he is getting a lot of carries in the postseason. He was out there early, and they had him in late. Deuce Vaughn, kind of similar guy, probably a little bit better between the tackles. Deuce Vaughn was a 3-down back at K-State this year. Don't know if he necessarily is going to be, probably not going to be a 3-down back in the NFL, but I do think he's going to be an NFL player. And he's going to be a nice guy. Look, I'm a running back guy. And if you look at a lot of these teams in the NFL and some of the final 8, like running back, like Christian McCaffrey has potential to be the best player in the playoffs right now. Like he's San Francisco's dog. Like Brock Purdy's getting a lot of credit, but when you have Christian McCaffrey back there, it makes it easy. We're talking about Daniel Jones with the Giants. Saquon Barkley's the workhorse. Saquon Barkley makes that a lot easier. So I think, for a while in the NFL, we went to this don't value running backs, and you don't want to draft them too early, and you can find them in the 6th round. I think it's kind of dated. You can find like small examples, but most of these teams, they have multiple backs. They've invested in running backs, and I think we're kind of getting to the point where they're so undervalued that you've got to go get these guys. They're immediate contributors. They help your entire team. They're immediately, for the most part, in their prime whenever you get them. So I think we're getting to that point where you got to value these dudes. Alfred says Kafka gives B.O.B. vibes. He is definitely a hardo. But I don't know about I don't know about B.O.B. because I've never seen B.O.B. work with a quarterback like he did Daniel Jones. But yeah, the Hardo stuff, yes, there's definitely potential for him to kind of lose it. Tyler talking about Tony Dungy. Clearly, the criticism of the Texans firing David Coley and Lovie Smith is valid because look at how many offers they have had for interviews and jobs since the Texans moved on. Wait a minute. Hashtag sarcasm there, I'm assuming. JRG says, notice these guys didn't bring up Jacksonville, Denver, and Cleveland with all the coaching turnover they have. That is true. George says that Payton sounded like he knew he could build a team he wants in Houston. That's true. That's true. And he would be in control of the roster and would have some small guys. It's getting interesting. It'll be really, really interesting. JRG, Tom Brady will probably go to the Raiders. He needs to go away, is where he needs to go. Jesus Oliveris, pair Tony Pollard with Pierce. Sign me up for it. Tony Pollard, when he starts, one of the best backs in the league. You've heard me say it. I'll say it again. JRG talking about Lamar. No one's paying him $250 guaranteed. There was a report the other day that people kind of laugh at that Deshaun Watson deal. You remember when Tunsil got what he got and the owners were kind of mad at Jack, the POS person of service, Easterby, and Bill O'Brien for kind of resetting the tackle market. And it wasn't even like a starting point for guys who maybe could have been considered better tackles at the time. That's kind of how people look at the Watson thing. You just kind of roll your eyes at that. That's not going to be like some sort of starting point. TJ says Debo is a problem. Also, we need a wide receiver who can get first down on a 3-yard route. Debo is a problem. And Debo was probably the best player in the playoffs last year. He's kind of finding his grip. San Francisco's got some mofos on offense and defense. They got mofos all over the place, man. I mean, they get off the bus ready to fight. Shout out to Charles Omenihu, too, for getting his 2 sacks. I always liked talking to Omenihu when he was here. But between Debo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Ayuk, just got Elijah Mitchell back, Trent Williams holding it down. San Francisco, man, they got some damn dogs on their squad. Alfred says Aaron Rodgers and Payton tandem would be better than Brady and Payton. What are we doing now? Chris says we already have a stud back. Taking Bijan at 12 would be ludicrous. No, it wouldn't. Especially when you have an extra draft pick. We've got to get away from that. Let's put it this way. The Jacksonville Jaguars don't win their playoff game. They're not in the playoffs. They don't win the division without Travis Etienne. They got the extra draft pick, and they drafted Travis Etienne in the first round, despite the fact they had James Robinson, who rushed for the top 5 in the league in rushing, rushed for between 1,100 and 1,000 yards, something like that, his rookie year, and they still drafted Travis Etienne. It's not ludicrous. Like Dameon Pierce, you need to make him 1A, 1B or 1A, because he's never, ever, ever had the workload that they asked him to have this year. At Florida, I think he had double-digit carries, not even 10 times. I think it was 7. So there was a little bit of wear and tear this year that you don't want. You want Dameon Pierce effective. You want him at the end of games, maybe as kind of your closer, like ending games and all that type of stuff. Again, Sean Payton had Mark Ingram, and he still drafted Alvin Kamara. And that was, 2 or 3, round 2 or 3, but you got the extra back, and it ended up paying off. The Kansas City Chiefs, like we always use the example of they drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and it's like, that's why you don't take a running back. You never say that about any other position. If they would have taken Jonathan Taylor, would we have said that? No, we wouldn't have. But we say that, but we say that just because there's some sort of like bias against running backs. Come on. Like, let's be serious. When elite running backs are out there, you take them. Don't neglect them. The league is changing a little bit. And I think teams are starting to get a little smarter to it, to where, whether it's the second round, like look at the second round running back. Saquon was a first round running back. Derrick Henry was a second round running back. Christian McCaffrey was a first round running back. They traded what they did to bring in Christian McCaffrey. San Francisco could have said, we don't need a running back. If they'd done that, they probably wouldn't even be where they're at right now. They haven't lost a game since they traded for Christian McCaffrey. And that's on top of giving up the draft comp that they did for a quarterback. So, no, I completely disagree that, first of all, Pierce is someone that you want completely handling that full workload. And I love Dameon Pierce. Dameon Pierce is a star. He's one of the most likable guys on the team. He's going to have a long career, but you're not going to be putting him in position to succeed if you're going to hand him the rock 20, 25 times a game. Make him your second best back. You have 1A and 1B, and you get it popping. I don't agree. Like, it would not be crazy. First of all, Bijan's not going to be there at 12. Philadelphia might F around and use their extra pick that they got from the Saints, and instead of paying Sanders, get Bijan Robinson. Because the one thing that I am kind of against is giving second contracts to running backs. I think if you get 3 elite years, then you charge it to the game, and maybe you evaluate it and figure out if you can get a team-friendly deal like the Titans did with Derrick Henry. But if you can get 3 elite years, especially if you have an extra pick, then that's what you do. I mean, could you imagine if Kansas City would have taken Jonathan Taylor or A.J. Dillon instead of Clyde Edwards-Helaire? I mean, would we be sitting here saying, that's why you don't take a running back? People don't say that when a receiver's like a bust. You notice that? Like when the Philadelphia Eagles drafted Jalen Reagor, or, a team drafts another position that ends up being a bust, you don't hear people say, well, that's why you don't take a receiver there. No, it's just when it's a running back, because we have a bias against it. Sean Payton won't. So if Bijan goes down to 12 and the Texans get Bijan Robinson at 12, someone who you can line up in the slot and someone who you can use in multiple ways along with Dameon Pierce. What was the dude's name? Chris? Shout out to Chris, man. You're in here a lot. I'm not trying to pick on you. But if you do that, man, you should thank your lucky stars that you were able to get that. 100%. Rick P saying A.J. Dillon. I think A.J. Dillon would have been good in Kansas City. I don't think we've seen the best of A.J. Dillon. Who knows what he would be in KC. But you get my point. If they would have drafted the right back. A.J. Dillon's kind of a frustrating guy, though, for fans. Even J.K. Dobbins. I think if Dobbins hadn't gotten hurt, if Kansas City had drafted J.K. Dobbins, and let's say he's healthy, I think J.K. would have been a nice pick in the first round. Instead of Clyde. He got hurt. Now you'll have the running back bias, and they'll say, see, running backs get hurt. Joe Burrow tore his ACL his first year. I mean, there's all kinds of injuries, but for whatever reason, people just foam at the mouth when it comes to running backs. See, that guy got hurt. Can't draft him. Okay. So did the tight end that they took. So did the wide receiver. So did the tackle. So did the center. Happens. It's football. But you need those running backs. Sean Payton gets that. But will the Texans get Sean Payton? That's TBD. But he did talk to him. He does seem to be interested. He does, unlike Tony Dungy and some others, he does seem to have a grasp of what the job is. DeMeco Ryans, he's going to talk to him a little bit later on. And Mike Kafka, he's a hardo. He's focused. He's too hard to talk right now. Will they end up talking to him, or will they fall in love with one of these other guys? Who knows? Evero going to interview a little bit later this week, as is Brown. So it's only been about a week that we've been in this process, but it seems like a month ago, Lovie Smith was fired, and the most exciting, important offseason in franchise history is very, very fun. I appreciate you for riding along with me. Subscribe to the channel, like, spread, #1 source for daily Texans digital content. The show of record in the city on Sports Radio 610, 10 to 2 in the loop with myself and John Lopez and Figgy Fig. Fire up the Odyssey app. Check that out again. Lots of access to the team, lots of insight. You got the OG wisdom, got myself. We love covering this team. We love rapping with you, cussing and discussing, and I love talking to you in the locker room. A lot to get into throughout the week. If you did not already check out the 15-minute video about C.J. Stroud declaring and my thoughts on that, do so. Check out the other videos, like them, and no matter what happens, whether it's Sean Payton, whether it's DeMeco Ryans, whether Hardo Mike Kafka swoops in after he gets done being a Hardo and coaching football, no matter who they hire. If they hire one of the Eagles guys, if they hire Brown, if they hire Evero, hell, if they call back Lovie Smith and David Culley and bring those guys back, it doesn't matter because we are all in this together. Appreciate you. Have a good one. Thanks for riding with me, and I'll talk to you guys later.